Let's continue our journey in the four pillars of investing with fundamental analysis. This is the second section in this pillar, and we're going to dive deeper now into personal fundamental analysis. And I will tell you that I'll let you decide what is the most important financial statement in your life. Is it your government's? If you live in Australia, is it really the Australian government that controls your life? Is it a corporation's financial statement, maybe the place you work? Or is it your own financial statement? You have the power to choose who will determine your fate. I'll bet there's people in Greece who, Greece has really rough fundamentals, right? They're not a government bond I'd be excited to buy based on their fundamentals and their ability to pay their bills. I'd much rather search elsewhere. But I'll tell you, I'll bet there's people that live in Greece that are very wealthy and doing just fine. In other words, you have the power to choose who will determine your fate. There's a lot. Let's talk about our mindset here for a moment. I kind of have been able to become truly free from political chains, meaning that I very much care about my country and I'm politically active, but I don't feel much pain if my pick for president doesn't make it, which really has never happened because, I'm weird in who I vote for. But I don't worry so much. I feel bad for others because so many people are dependent on their sovereign nation to keep them alive, right? There's a certain percentage of people in my home country that need that safety net. And the reason they need it is because they really don't know how. The school has failed them. The communities have failed them because financial education and the context and the spirit of the American dream has not burned in their hearts. And they've started at a disadvantage. And as long as they are here, the fate of the government will determine their fate. In other words, the government can decide what their income is, right? Because they don't decide it. And I think that's a tragedy. And the problem the government has is they can only give a person so much, but they'll never be able to give someone the abundant life, right? I love equality. I despise unfairness and inequality. I also recognize in the same breath that that also removes the chance for someone to dream to be great and create a legacy for their family. So be that as it may, there are others who are very much dependent on a corporation. And whether they get a raise is out of their hands, and their 401k plan is run by someone else, and they don't get a chance to determine their fate. So I will tell you that once you begin to see the world through this view, I wish with all my heart that everyone could learn these things and that they would be taught in school and that would be taught simply and well, that people would have a cash flow academy in their life at age 14 or 15 or 13 or 7, 8, and 9 like my boys. Because once you see the world through this, income, expenses, assets, and liabilities, you begin to get the first vision of what you could do in America. And once you really realize that the money comes from here to here to here to here, once you realize that what might be the ultimate financial statement, you realize that the American dream is alive and well, that you can borrow as much money as you want to borrow. And once a person figures that one out, it doesn't really matter what their background was, and it doesn't matter that they didn't have a great school because they're not interested in a job anymore. They're interested in entrepreneurship. But I'll tell you, if you want a job, you're disadvantaged if you're born in the wrong part of this country. I'll tell you that. But if you don't want a job and you just want to learn this, equal opportunity, it's an amazing thing. Buckle up. What I'm about to do is I'm about to show you 8 numbers. And we're going to go through these one by one with a little bit of what I call click commentary. I'll click and give a little commentary on one, and we'll go through them so we understand what they are. But I'm going to show you these 8 numbers. And as we go through these 8 numbers, I'm gonna make a claim that these numbers can change your life. And as we go through them, your faith and confidence in that claim will grow and grow and grow. So my wife and I have a habit that, and we're not perfect in it, but most every Thursday, certainly more often than not, for sure, because it's an exciting meeting for us. If there's a funeral or whatever, we're human beings. But barring any catastrophe, on Thursdays, it just happens to be the best day. It could be a Monday, it could be a Sunday, but for whatever reason, for us, it's become Thursdays. At about 11:30, we have a meeting. And in that meeting, we set goals for what those 8 boxes are going to look like the next month. And I will tell you that a person that simply, I am telling you, a person that simply has a meeting once a week to decide what those numbers want to look like next month, and you will not achieve the goal every month. That's not the point. The goal is that you work towards it every month. They will change. And these are the 8 numbers that will absolutely change the course of your life. I will tell you that without reservation, that if you and I together can help each other understand these 8 numbers and set goals for these 8 numbers, pretty amazing. So we'll go through this pretty quick. There's 3 types of income tax-wise. You have active income, that's ordinary income that you work for. There's portfolio income, that's when you buy something and it grows, much like a capital gain. There's passive income, an example would be rent. You can study more, and we'll learn more as we go on about active, portfolio, and passive, but that's the way the IRS would look at it. So there are different types of income. So one of the goals we would look at on a typical Thursday meeting would be, how much of this do we want? For example, maybe someone like, I have great friends like, Richard Tahn at Success Resources, or, whomever might say, hey, Andy, could you fly and give a speech? And maybe I say, well, great. Will you pay for my flight and compensate me? And they say, sure. That would be an active income. Now, there's nothing wrong with active income if you enjoy it. What's problem is if you have to do it. I know my friend Robert Kiyosaki, he speaks a little bit more than I do, but he certainly is further along in his asset column than I am. I mean, his book has sold more than my books, right? He has more real estate than I have. He's certainly ahead of me by, a few years, a couple of decades in terms of that. But he actually enjoys a speaking engagement. And so the idea isn't that active income is bad. The idea is that active income is to be something you can enjoy. And I'm telling you, that guy wouldn't have to give a speech the rest of his life. And so, I don't do as much of that as I used to, but it's okay for you to have an active income that you like, as long as you can say no and not have to go do it. You see that? Because the moment you have to go do it, it can become work in a hurry. I know guys that I hang out with guys that play in the NBA every month. I have friends that play in the NBA. I have friends that I see every month that won championships, like NBA titles. And I know some of them, by the time they were in about 10 years, basketball was tough because it was just, you had to go out there and do it. And even though they had tons of money, it became a job. So active income, you set a goal there. You say, hey, how much active income do I want? What kind of portfolio income do I want? What kind of passive income do I want? So you got 3 numbers in that one. What's the number? What's the income number? And what's the total income? And how does that pie, come out, right? How does that pie come out? What does that look like? Very simple. Taxes is the greatest expense. So I will tell you right now, unapologetically, I will tell you who my accountant is. His name is Tom Wilwright. He lives in Phoenix, Arizona. He has a book called Tax-Free Wealth. He's the Rich Dad Advisor for taxes. He's the guy that does my taxes, and go buy his book. I'm not going to give a big sales presentation on it. Just go buy the book. It's part of your financial education, because the fastest way, he will tell you this, the fastest way to permanently improve your cash flow would be to reduce your taxes. And that's just obeying the law, right? Find out what the government wants you to do and do it. because they'll give you tax incentives if you do what they want you to do, which is build houses, drill oil wells, and invest in markets. You have necessities and luxuries. Necessities are food, clothing, shelter, and medicine. It's that bottom of the hierarchy of Maslow's hierarchy. And then you have luxuries. Now, my goal is to take that one lower, to keep that one the same, and to take that one higher. That's my goal. So my wife and I, we say, look, this right here has a lot to do with your quality of life. So, for example, we set goals to spend more on things than less. For example, if we're going to take a trip to Hawaii, our goal is not to cut the expense on the trip. That's a lifestyle thing. I got it. I'm 6'8". You think I'm going to fly to Hawaii and coach? Are you out of your mind? The poor guys next to me, that ruined their trip too. I walk down the aisle, you can see people saying, please, not him. Don't let that guy be in the middle seat by me. Please, anyone but that guy. My gosh, he's a horse. And so first class tickets. When we go shopping, organic foods, right? When we go to the theater, the best seats, the best restaurants, cars that are new, not old, right? Those are luxuries, and that is, the best medicine. Our sons have their own money, but they use the money they earn from both their investments and the active income they do on trainers and basketball coaches and personalized training and piano lessons. And they become accomplished pianists, and the quality of their life goes up because they enjoy piano and they enjoy being able to make a three-pointer in a game and to have people cheer for them. Your life gets better when you have luxury. And it's not shallow, and it's not greedy, and it's not all that stuff that people want to justify. Look, this number is supposed to go up overall. So for me, I like it. And then you can choose yours here, here, and here. That's how I like mine. And I hope I'm spending more money next year than I am this year, because it makes other people rich when I spend, and it enriches my life. First class tickets is my goal. I'm not trying to fly Southwest, right? That's not what I want. Sorry, Southwest. I'll buy your stock. How's that? Buffett did. So surplus or deficit, that's easy. The worst people to listen to on this is probably the U.S. government. They have no concept of this apparently, or they just don't care. But I like the idea of having a surplus here. So if my goal is to have this go up and this go up, that means that this stuff probably goes up, right? That I have to have that stuff go up. Assets. Let's go through this quicker. Let's not let the ball stick in the game. That's what happens in basketball. If you don't move the ball, it sticks. We don't want to have that happen here either. So assets is a little bit more complex because your accountant might have a different opinion than my accountant, and you read one book on one thing and one the other. So I'll give you a basic definition of an asset and a liability that I like, and it's the one Robert Kiyosaki gave me. He says, well, Andy, the definition of an asset is something that puts money in your pocket, and liabilities take money out of my pocket. That's a good way to talk about this kind, which was an income-producing asset. Problem is that definition, to me, seems surprisingly simple, but I have to admit there are many people who have been confused by it, not because there's anything wrong with that definition, but because the rest of the world doesn't agree with it and they don't understand it. So you have to get along with everyone, and what the world will tell you, what an accountant will tell you, is that it's the stuff you own. And that may or may not put money in your pocket, but they say, hey, if you have a car and you could sell it, that's an asset. So the way they see it is an asset is something that could be liquidated. If you're a company, and there's real problems with that, because when you take this approach that it's something you own that could be liquidated, well, they say, well, what can you liquidate for? And boy, that's when what we call book value, we'll learn about book value, that's the value of what you put on the books, and it's an opinion. How do you know how much a house is worth? The only time you'll ever know how much a house is worth is if you sell it. Okay, how much does a house cash flow? That I can tell you, right? That I can tell you. So stuff you own is, diamond earrings. They would count that, most accountants. A gold watch, jewelry, collectibles, art, a painting. Jim Rickards in The Road to Ruin says, hey, go start buying paintings as an asset. Well, those put money in your pocket? Probably not. So it's really important to understand the difference between just stuff that you own and stuff that produces income. And I love my friend Robert Kiyosaki. Says, look, to him, this is it. That's an asset. If it doesn't produce income, it's not a real asset. It might be a fake asset. But accountants will have you list stuff you own. So, for example, Robert would say your home is not an asset. And other people say it is. So when you got Robert saying it isn't, you got an accountant saying it is, my gosh, then what do you do? So understanding both sides of that coin by coming to the edge, you'll become more intelligent. Robert says it's this, your accountant might say it's this. Well, come and understand what both are saying, and that really helped me. Okay, I get it. If an accountant were to say, Andy, your antique car is an asset because it could be liquidated. That's his definition of an asset. Robert says that old car isn't an asset because it's not making any money. I can accept that too. And then you also have assets that are capital gain assets that go up and down in value instead of produce income. So there's another number. There's stuff you owe and promises you've made. This is going to become more clear when we do sovereign fundamentals, because right now our government owes $22 trillion or however much they've borrowed, right, in my government. But they might have promised trillions more through promises they've made through programs. So it's very important for liabilities to say, look, often they call these unfunded liabilities where you don't have money for them or you haven't been funded. So, for example, maybe I make a promise to my son that if he works hard in school, then I'll pay for his college. Well, the credit agencies don't know about the promise, and I didn't borrow any money. I just promised some. So when you promise, you can create a liability. This is what happens with companies like Hostess that have pensions, is they don't really borrow any money. They're not in debt, but they owe their workers a pension when they retire. So there's stuff you owe because of what you've borrowed, and then there's promises. And then we'll talk more about good and bad debt. I'll just submit this idea that if I gave you my credit card and said, go for it, I'll pay it off, that'd be pretty good debt for you and pretty bad debt for me. So I like this definition. Good debt is debt that I don't have to pay off, and bad debt is debt that I do have to pay off. It's not whether it buys an asset or liability. Shoot, I'll buy a liability with debt if someone else pays it off. I got no problem with that. Buy an asset or a liability. I'll buy junk. I'll buy doodads if someone else pays it off. So the problem with debt is having to pay it off. That's when you get stressed. If you have to pay it off, that's where the stress comes. If you don't have to pay it off, that's great. So one of the cool things about, when we look at this number is we want our good debt to go up and we want our bad debt to go down. And we want our promises down, and the stuff we owe, well, it depends on if it's good or bad debt. I love lots and lots and lots of debt that buys me an asset that someone else will pay for, like a renter. So again, it's not just about income up, expenses down, right? No. Maybe active income needs to come down. Maybe passive income needs to come up. Maybe taxes is down, but luxury is up, right? Maybe promises are down, bad debt's down, but good debt's up, right? And so as you begin to understand these 8 numbers and set goals every Thursday or Friday or Monday, and I'll tell you, our coaches will do this with you, and they will help you get in this habit and help establish where you are and understand these numbers better than you think. Look at the education continuum. Are you proficient in this? Aware? Competent? Where are you on the continuum? Ignorant? Competent? Aware? Proficient? Where are you when it comes to understanding this? This is the language of money. This is the financial education of money that we focus on every single week. And I said earlier, there'd be some moments in this class where we talk about the 8 numbers where you might say, my gosh, if I started paying attention to this, setting goals on this, it would absolutely alter my life. Well, this is that moment to find out whether you hit it or not. Positive or negative net worth, this is probably the least important number on here, and yet this is the 401k number everybody worries about. I like this number better than that number man, I would put a big greater than sign that cash flow is greater than net worth any day of the week. Now, you can get to be an accredited investor by having an income of $300,000 or more, which gives you better opportunities to buy better assets, or at least higher paying off assets, more assets that pay off higher potentially. Or you can do it with $1 million net worth if you don't count your residence. So I guess in that case, net worth might help you. It gets you out into the fast track of at least opportunity for higher risk investments, higher risk return investments. But net worth is that. Now, buying power is the real big one. And this is why I think my friend Robert Kiyosaki says this is the most important skill of an entrepreneur, is raising capital. Because if we look at the ultimate financial statement, right, that we talked about, that looked like this: into the liability, get a liability that helps you acquire an asset, that gives you an income that helps you pay off the expense. That ultimate financial statement, it begins with buying power, right? So the buying power is simply this: if I came to you with an opportunity today, could you buy it? And how big can you go? That's really what buying power number is if I came to you today and I said, this is so huge, this is the life changer right here, man. If I come to you and I say, I have $1 million opportunity, could you buy it? I got $1 million opportunity, could you buy it? Here's a $2 million opportunity, could you buy it? Here's a $100,000 opportunity, can you participate? The first thing that allows you to participate in an opportunity is your buying power. And that's how big a game you can play. If a person changes their context, and I might even dare say improves their context, buying power, what if this was one of your goals? And what if you took the 40 hours at a job that a person works and just said, I'm going to take 10 of those hours a week to build this? Over a person's lifetime, how much buying power do you think they'd build? Now, there's a couple ways to build buying power. You can work and save yourself rich, or you can borrow yourself rich. Saving takes a lot of time because you got to do work first. It takes no work to borrow. Very little, I should say. It takes very little work to borrow. It's basically a presentation and an agreement that needs to be done, and they loan you money. They give you money. They invest money. So here's your buying power. Number one, it's your liquid assets. What could you liquidate? And we're even talking about stuff you own here. I did this just for fun. I thought, Andy, if you're going to go out and you're going to teach this to people, do the very best you can to live it. And it's been a long time since I'd really thought about this, because that would be very much for a beginner, just to get the mindset right. But I thought, I wonder if I could do it. And man, we did like $5,000 in 3 days. I got on OfferUp and eBay or whatever it was, and the local KSL classified ads and all this. And it was just like, I had stuff on there. I just went and took a picture of stuff in my garage and that I hadn't used. If I hadn't touched it in 10 years, I took a picture of it, right? And it was just like money poured in. My wife did the same thing. Let's do in our Thursday meeting. Let's do this together. Now, $5,000 isn't a lot of money, but the point was there was cash that was turned into trash that we turned back into cash. So I just want to do it so I know it could be done. What's more important to me are these two: is institutional credit, which is great for refinance, which is huge at the end of a deal, and private money at the beginning of a deal. A syndication uses both. Stock traders could use both. Hedge fund guys could use both. This is the big money. And so I'll let you learn private money and we'll do this in other classes. But what's cool is, there's advantages to all, but in institutional credit, I try to seek that every single month. I try to make that bigger. And through relationships and what you can do, and private money, let me put it to you this way. I know people, and I won't mention names on this one, but I know more than one. I know people that can raise, $10 million in an email. And the reason is because they're so good at buying these with their financial education that they don't need money. Let me say that again. They have studied assets so well, and their track record is so strong that people are waiting for them to email saying, I've got another deal. Can I send the money? Now, if a person spent 40 hours a week at a job, but what if they spent 20 hours a week learning this and building this and getting good at this? Money will find you. There's a saying in basketball that says, don't push the offense too hard. Let the ball find you. Just run your offense. Let the ball find you. Don't hunt shots down. Let the ball find you. And it's so ironic. Just pause for a minute. It's so ironic that there are some people in the world that couldn't raise a dime, and there's other people in the world where it's now just a mouse click away from an email. I have another deal. You in or out? Do you want to know or not? $10 million, just like that. I was in a meeting once, I will name names here, I was in a meeting once with Robert Kiyosaki in one of our trainings that we do every 6 months as advisors when we do our book studies together. And we just kind of went around the room and said, how fast could you raise $1 million? And Robert asked a few people, he says, Kenny, how about you? And Kenny just said, lunch. So I have it by lunch. Not the end of lunch. I can have it by lunch, right? It's a phone call away for these guys because they've set up so many investors that want to invest in what they're doing. And the reason the investors want to invest in what they're doing is they understand the assets. And so there's no need for a job. So hopefully you're having some epiphanies here saying, my gosh, and people get worried about detail. Just relax for a minute. Well, how could I do that? How could I do that? I don't know anybody. How could I? Yeah, but and that's that little voice that conquers everybody. Just relax and just say, look, if I were to do it, if I did know how to do it, if I did know, wouldn't that be a fun way to do it? And the truth of the matter is you can. You really, really can. If you seek honesty in your heart of heart, can you raise your buying power? Absolutely. And if you can't, well, get a coach, right? Start doing some stuff and you'll be surprised. I'm going to sell this to you for a minute. Let me put on my salesman hat and sell this to you. Does it make sense to you that people with lots of money would not want it in a bank account? If it's in their bank account, they have cash here, its value is going down, right? Because of inflation printing. So it makes sense that they'd want their money in assets that could grow, especially these kind. Wealthy people like these kind of assets. If you find one, they will give money to you and let you get what's called sponsorship equity in it. They have no problem with you taking a piece of a deal for free if you'll let them share in it. Think of it this way. What if you found gold in your backyard, but you didn't have a pick or a shovel? And you knocked on my door and said, hey, Andy, I don't have money for pick and a shovel. Tell you what, if you give me money to buy my pick and shovel, I'll share 5% of my gold with you, and I'll keep 95%. The guy is going to buy you a pick and a shovel and hand you that money right there because he doesn't have to do anything. He's going to get a great return. He doesn't care you're keeping 95% of the pot because he knows if he's greedy, you'll go to someone else. Then they'll give you the money for the pick and the shovel. So the secret sauce is financial education. That's all it is. It's just understanding what a good-looking asset is and the ability to create an asset if they hand you the money. That's what financial education is knowing how to take that money and give those guys back a return and create your own asset in the process. It's pretty cool stuff. So again, every Thursday, okay, what's our private money look like? What's our institutional credit like? And I'll confess this isn't something we've always considered because, look, how much money is in your garage? Not much, right? But it's still a great way to start. If you have nothing to buy a stock with, it's a great place to start with no skills of persuasion and stuff, right? So there you go. Credit scores last. We're going to round this out with credit score, and I'll give you a little bit on this. Credit score stuff is about payment history, and I'll show you, this is very important, and this is very important, and this is very important. This right here, less important, less important. This right here, very small importance. So we make a lot of hard inquiries, and we build up our credit and stuff. And the highest score you can get, and I'll share some personal stuff. Here's my credit scores, okay, and I have excellent credit, but you'll notice, I wonder if I have this on here. I think I do. So the highest you can get is 850, okay? And I never hang out at 850 because guess what you need to do to get institutional money? 750. So you don't have to have perfect credit. You just have to have, which 750 is like right here. You just have to have good credit. You don't have to bury the needle at 850 like this. I'm not quite at 850. And so you can hard inquiries. Now, on a personal level, this is the least important number in your life. It is so unimportant. They act like it's important because they want to charge you to monitor it every month. But private investors don't ask you for your personal credit score. And if they do, they probably don't know what they're doing. A private investor looks at the deal. They're smart enough to know that it's not about you, it's about the deal. And if you're smart, you'll know what a good deal looks like. And if they're smart, they'll know what a deal looks like. And there's not much of a sales pitch there. If they can look at the deal and it's good, they'll know. It's not about being slick willy. It's not about your ability to persuade, even though Bernie Madoff can do that. And there are those there. To get real investor money, just come up with a good deal and they can tell whether it's good or not. But this is actually important because here you've got corporate and here you've got, AA1 rating right here, not on watch. This is a good rating for Apple right here, for Apple Computer, from whenever they tested it, right, and checked it out last. And so that's their long-term rating on how they're doing. Here's their short-term over here. So this is important if you want to borrow money as a corporation because there's something called a corporate bond, right? There's something called a corporate bond. Over here in the U.S., there's something called a treasury bond. And over here, there's something called a mortgage or a signature loan. So when people want to borrow money as a person, they look at this one. When people want to borrow money selling bonds as a corporate, they look at this one. When people want to borrow money as a T-bill or treasury bill, they look at this one. And so the only reason I bring it up is that it is one of the numbers that is part of your personality profile. Are you credible? Will you pay it back? So, and I don't really want to spend a lot of time on credit because it just doesn't matter that much. But it is interesting to dispel some myths because, certain credit is good for certain things. Like, let's look at a real estate example that I share with a lot of my real estate friends that are just getting into real estate. And I don't like talking about real estate very much because Kenny and Than and my friends are better at that than I am by like 1,000 miles. I mean, I'm not even in their league. But if you look at lines of credit, like credit cards here, lines of credit. If you look at mortgage type stuff at a bank, right? Mortgage type stuff. And if you look at private money from private equity, because you've heard of private equity firms, private money. Those are three kinds of money. So this is the source. Okay, that's not very neat, but we can deal with that. Okay, then you have, watch this, then you have the, this might tie together good credit and bad credit and tie this all together really well. Then you have the investment. What are you going to buy with it? What are you going to use that credit for? So you might have, let's just use real estate for example. Let's say you were going to be a long-term investor for rent. That would be my preference. Okay, that's fine. Maybe you're a house flipper and you want to do rehabs, and that's not what a guy like Kenny would do. Than would do it, but that's a business for him, just like construction. I mean, what is a construction company? They flip houses. They build houses and sell them, and rehabbers fix houses and sell them. So if you have a system and you're a construction company, like no one would look at a guy and say, yeah, I own, A1 construction company, right? Oh, you're a house flipper. No, you do construction. Well, sometimes house flippers really are bad. They're house flippers. Others are rehabbers who have systems and businesses. So they are different. It's more like having a construction company, right? That you own. And you have to run it like a company or you're just a house flipper. So you have rent, you have rehab, maybe you've got operations, employees, right? Like advertising. Like you're going to run some ads to advertise your business. Maybe you got commercial property like syndications. And then you have who pays it off as part of the plan. So let's write this down. Who pays the debt off? Right? Well, it could be you. It could be, in this case, a renter, right? Or it could be a buyer of a property, something like that. So watch this. This might be interesting. Let's draw some green arrows. So if it were rent, what would the best source of credit be? Well, this is short term. A credit card or a line of credit probably isn't going to be a 30-year deal, and private money investors are going to want their money back before 30 years. So a mortgage makes a lot of sense for borrowing money to get a house rented out for cash flow. Having a bank carry that at a low interest rate probably makes a lot of sense, and the renter would pay it off. So I'd say that's pretty good debt. I don't have to pay it off. I'm getting an asset. Mortgage is being paid for by the renters. That's pretty nice. Let's look at a rehab. Well, a mortgage, banks aren't going to give you money for a rehab. Maybe a construction loan, maybe. But that's slow, and it takes a lot. It takes all this time to figure out, and underwriters and credit checks and all this. But if you go to your Uncle Larry even and say, look, I'm going to do this, loan me $50,000 or loan me $250,000 to get this thing done. Well, then if you flip it, or there's a buyer or a renter, either one could pay that off, but it's not you. And it's the quality of your systems and your knowledge that protect you. Because if you don't have that, you have no renter and you have no buyer. The key is the quality of this system to produce a renter or buyer, in my case more a renter. The quality of that system determines whether the renter will pay for it or you will pay for it. Let me say it again. The knowledge and quality of your system depends on whether you'll have to pay it off or they'll pay it off. Maybe it's operations to get ads. That's, a private guy's going to want it backed by real estate. Banks don't do this. But again, if I'm in the rental business, that's the one that would pay it off. Commercial uses both of these because you have the bank part called the debt, and you have the private money part called the equity. This is usually 75. This is usually 25. And it's paid off by these guys, or 5 years, 10 years down the road, they may get you an offer and buy you out. So, learning about debt and credit this is just very unimportant, but it's worth mentioning just to show you this. Think about this. Payment history they like, credit card use they like, effective derogatory marks, they don't like those on there. Credit age is medium, total accounts is low. And so here's what's interesting. If they don't ding you here and they don't ding you bad here, if these are low impact, what are the ones they're wanting you to do? Well, in order to use a credit card and have age, you've got to have inquiry. So it makes sense that they're not going to ding you that hard for trying to build these up. What if it were backwards? Then you'd really be in trouble because, the higher the inquiry, well, then they wouldn't give you any. So, I screw around with this and go up and down. I put in a lot of inquiries just for fun. And I often use this in speeches that I give, so I keep it really fluid and different examples. But private money doesn't even matter about this. But it's just interesting for people to see. Let's finish this up with 3 goals that we have. The first goal is pretty common. It's lifestyle goals. I'd like to quit my job. I'd like to go to Hawaii or take my wife to Paris on our 30th wedding anniversary. I want a new Harley Davidson for $30,000 or whatever, right? They're lifestyle goals. And we don't want to be materialistic. If material things ruin our marriage, and if money and greed and if it ruins our love for people and robs us of our compassion for people, and all we care about is start getting into stuff mode, well then shoot, let's not even do this. But I'll tell you, if you can manage money, there's a lot of philanthropy that Warren Buffett does and Bill Gates does, and There's a lot of wonderful things you can give to your kids and your family. And love isn't built on money, but it sure is built on time. If you don't give time to the people you love, you can't give them what you don't have. And I would say that one way to show love wouldn't be necessarily showering someone with gifts, but showering children with time. That's a great way to show love. And so freedom is a worthwhile pursuit. It's not a lazy thing. Most people work really, really hard to get there so you don't have to work hard, right? That's a big deal. Experiences are better than doodads to me. I think happiness comes from those things. I have wonderful memories of traveling all over the world with my kids, and I hope we make more of those. And there are some doodads I love. I think one of the best doodads a person can have is a Wilson NCAA leather basketball. I think that's an essential for everyone to have. I don't know why that isn't required. You should immunize your children, send them to school, but send a basketball with them. That's just my opinion. I think a fishing pole should be required for all kids, but that's just my opinion. But those are doodads. Piano lessons. They cost money. And so we have lifestyle goals. Now, once you put a number on your lifestyle goal, it now turns into a money goal. So that's the second goal. So what can really motivate you is, and I will tell you, I have done this, is I have a book that I got from Robert Kiyosaki called The Miracle Morning. Love the book. Thought it was well done. It's short, it's easy. It's just a routine book. But it has this thing called savers in it. You know, S is for silence, and A is for affirmation, and V is for vision. And one of the things I have is it's a password protected file in my computer that only I see. I don't even share it with my family. Is I have a vision board. And in this vision board, I have pictures of what some of this stuff is that I have yet to achieve. And I go and I look at these things in my real life. And you do this every day as part of your routine. And then you say, okay, then, you know, like I don't want a motorcycle. That's not on my vision board. But if it were, I'd go down to the Harley Davidson dealership and I'd say, okay, this one's $30K or $15K or whatever it is. And a good Harley is 30. A low end is about 8 probably. And a medium range is probably 15 to 17. So maybe that's the one you want. And all of a sudden that becomes a money goal. Now it's tangible. Now you can work on it. You follow that? And so the vision board, and I have to tell you that it's interesting that when I achieve the money goal, then I cross that off the vision board and I replace it with something bigger and something new. And it's an exciting way to get up in the morning and live. It's exciting to get up in the morning and have something you're working towards, and have something to make you. It's an incredible way to live, and it's like the journey. It's not even like getting a motorcycle. It's like, can I get this? Can I do it? And that brings me to, you know, your education goals. Is your education will tell you about how you're going to get the assets to get it. So I am going to give you some homework here. This is where the homework will start is, you know, get with a coach. I'm unapologetic about that because I just know the value of these guys. They're not there to teach you. That's my job. That's our relationship. They're there to say, here's your assignment. Go do this week. Here's your assignment. Go do this. So one of the assignments that our coaches help guys with, and this is something you could do on your own, but with a coach, you get accountable and it changes and it's cool, is fill out these numbers. Take an hour and figure out what your active, passive, and portfolio income are and put it in there. Figure out what your taxes are, your necessities, your luxuries, and put it in there. Just get them in those categories. Look at your cash flow and get it in there. Assets, whatever it is, get them in there. This is hard to know because you're guessing on some things. You know, it's only when you sell it do you really know. And you got the liability number, you got the net worth number, and you got a buying power number, you got a credit score number, whatever yours may be. This is the average in the United States. It's 687. This is the average income in the U.S. at this time, according to the Department of Labor. That's the average expenses. That's the average cash flow. Average assets. Don't know what the average liability or net worth were, I guessed. Don't know what the average buying power is, I guessed. That is a fact. So You start where you are. Some people say, Andy, how much money do I need to start your program? Well, what does that matter? You got to start where you are anyway. So I don't mean to be crass on the question. It's an honest question. How much money do I need to start with? And I'll give you an honest answer. Well, you got to start where you are anyway. So regardless of where these numbers are, if a person takes those 8 numbers and starts to look at them, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, this is the one that starts with, this is the one that's most important. This is where you start, and this is what is most important. Right there, in my opinion, as I've studied these. I care very, very, very much about this. And the way to get this, if you trace it back, is from this, is from this, is from that. And so this is first, and this is most important. And that's my opinion. And it'll change your life. So, what type of assets are you going to buy comes down to this. And so set your education goals. Every person that's interested in paper assets might consider, after 4 pillars is over, take ultimate options. It's a lot harder than this class. It's a lot longer than this class. A lot more work. Yeah, I've had people all say this is equivalent to getting the work it takes to get a college degree. That's how good the financial education can be nowadays. And the reason is kids will invest in it. People invest in it. When I say kids, they don't want to have a student loan, and they don't want to have a job at the end. They're willing to put in the same work for a college degree if they could get a financial education degree. They're willing to put in the same work. They just don't want the student loan. They don't want the job at the end. They'd rather have an asset at the end. So that's a big deal. So those are the 3 goals you set. Start where you're at and talk to a coach. Say, these are my education goals to get these money goals, get these lifestyle goals. Goes backwards. You do these first, do these second, you do this third, in that order. What are these goals? Well, put some dollar amounts. My passive income's got to get above my expenses right here. Okay, how am I going to do that? Well, over here, let's get a plan to do that. Build a team. When it comes to your education goals, decide what's trivial and what's vital. Over here, you had a school board, and when it came to, say, dissecting the frog, they said that's vital. Everyone should dissect a frog. When it came to money, they said, oh, that's trivial. But you might be different. You might say, no, I think the financial education's vital and the frog is trivial. What's the difference between important and vital? It's very important that my wife give me a present on my birthday. Man, it's vital that I give my wife a present on her birthday, for sure. And so I would recommend that you take back your financial education or whatever education you want and say, look, I'm done with school. I'm not going to let a school board tell me what's interesting or important. For me, dissecting the frog was interesting. Wasn't important to me. It wasn't trivial. It was interesting. But it wasn't vital. It wasn't there. And yet they made me do it. I'd get in trouble with my parents for bad grades if I didn't go to zoology and do that, right? Dissect that freaking poor little frog, little Kermit, poor little guy. Didn't even let me take his legs home to fry him up. But I cared about this for me. They cared nothing about this. To them, we're not going to teach people about money. That's trivial. We're going to teach them how to get a job. Dissect a frog, but be a doctor. That's fine if you want to be a doctor. In other words, set your education goals. There's nothing wrong. There's no right or wrong to how you want to earn your money. It's just what you want. If you want to be a lawyer, be a lawyer. If you want to be a doctor, be a doctor. There's nothing wrong with it. But it has to be you, right? What's trivial to you? So set your education goals that way, and then get some implementation. Identify some tasks. This is what our coaches will help you do. Get some dates to put this stuff into action. The cash flow criteria is very clear, and you can add criteria of your own if you want or take away from this. When it comes to the people on my team, I don't like having my family or friends on it because if I need to fire them, it gets funky and it's just too emotional. So a brother-in-law is not a good accountant choice usually, right? I like the idea of learning from people that have been a practitioner. They don't have to be perfect. My coach, Rick Majerus, was not the best basketball player. He played. He was not a very good college player, but he's one of the best NBA. But he did practice. he did go out on the court. He could get in a game. He did do it, right? He wasn't an NBA level player, but he did practice what he did, right? He didn't have to be perfect. And his knowledge there. I need someone accessible. Warren Buffett's not my coach because I don't have his cell phone number yet, right? If a person is someone I can call and not bug them, and they're happy to hear my call, that's a person we can have accessibility to help us as a coach. There's a guy named Greg. I write about this in my book, Stock Market Cash Flow. There's a guy named Greg who I met after we had drifted apart. So he was, I guess he might have qualified as a friend, but we had not seen each other in 20 years. So I guess we're more acquaintances, and I had no problem firing him. So that's good. But when we saw each other again, I said, look, teach me how to do this, and I'm going to pay you 6 figures to do it. And he was like, you're going to pay me to do this? And I go, yeah. And the reason is if I don't, like I made a big mistake once. I had a guy wire my house that lived in my neighborhood. I bought a house a long time ago and, renovated some of it myself. We were first married, and there's this guy in my neighborhood that I knew that was kind of a friend that did wiring. And he gave me a smoking deal on it. I basically bought the wire and just gave him a few bucks. Guess what? I couldn't get that guy to come over because he had his regular job, and I wasn't top of mind because I was extra, and I was begging for his time. Let me tell you, once you pay someone top dollar, let me tell you what, if I'm paying my accountant, he's going to respond, right? If I pay my attorney, he's going to respond. If I pay my coach, they're going to respond. So I insist on coaches that are paid. Because I want the best they have, and I want it on my terms and my times, and they show up, and if there's an appointment made, they're going to be there if I paid them to be there. So compensate your coaches. I'm not kidding. You could feel it. I mean, those are the decisions that make you successful, or not. Oh, I want to save money and have my Uncle Larry coach me. Oh, you could just feel it. Come on, you can feel it. Get a coach. Pay him to help you. A good coach creates practice. I had some great basketball coaches in practice. A consistent and scheduled coaching that is on the calendar, that happens on a regular basis and has a beginning and an end to it. And then there has to be feedback and accountability. You can add that list if you want, but that's successful coaching right there. And that's what we decided when we decided to add a coaching option for people that wanted behaviors and to really be pushed to take action on this stuff. We said, all right, what would we want in a coach if we were looking for them? I says, well, I look for them all the time. This is what I want. So there you go. So set your education goals. Fill the gaps between ignorance and knowledge and behavior. Follow the education continuum. It's going to be awesome. Build a team. Our coaches will help you implement. Teachers help you learn. Bookkeepers track your 8 numbers for you. Accountants help you cut the taxes. Attorneys keep those assets safe. So pretty awesome stuff. Really cool stuff. So here's your action steps. It's the first time I'm giving you action steps in the 4 pillars. So see that you follow through with these and make the most of your training experience. If you have signed up for the Cashflow Academy group coaching, use the technology and the scheduling tools we have on the site. If you haven't signed up for it, sign up for it. You'll see how it works. You schedule, you see available times. You schedule time. You get in a small group, and you get live, the live coaching, and there's assignments and what you do. And I mean, as you go through this, you'll find that we can really organize this with action steps and practice, so each pillar becomes something you can do, not just something you talk about. So might seem at the outset pretty easy here. Well, let me tell you, we got 4 pillars to go. Update your financial statement for sure. Get those 8 numbers down. Write down all 3 levels of the goals. Write down a couple of lifestyle goals, a couple of money goals, a couple of education goals. Start thinking about your team. Start thinking about who your accountant's going to be, who's your attorney going to be. Start putting together a team that can help you build a nice financial statement, and then start looking at paper trade accounts and learn how to set this up, because we're going to be practicing when we start getting into stocks. And in the next in this next segment, we move from personal fundamentals to corporate fundamentals. And I will just tell you very, very plainly that the most important financial statement you'll ever study is your own. And the one that will impact your life is your own. I'll in this little segment, the way I started, is you get to choose. The government doesn't need to be the person who dictates your standard of living. Your boss doesn't need, and your corporation doesn't need to be the one that dictates your standard of living. With those 8 numbers and solid goals and knowledge and coaching and implementation, you can do it. Now, I said during these sessions, you start to feel some clarities and feel some adjustments and feel how, wow, if I do this, I will be on a different track. If I do this, and I start building these 8 numbers, I start having these meetings, this is going to be cool. And like, boy, Andy, we're just starting. We got a lot of 4 pillars to go. If I learn this can be a life changer. And that's the whole goal. I'm not interested in students that say, well, that was entertaining. When I get old and gray and have a long white beard and check out of this life, I want people to come up to my sons and say, man, the stuff your dad taught, tell you what, it changed the way I thought and it changed my life, and I got results because of it. Then I'll feel like we did some good at that point. So I guess I won't. I'll be dead and gone. My sons will feel good. All right. Low quality humor, but that's what we get. Fun stuff, man. Awesome. Now, we're going to move into corporate. And this is what most people really think of when they think about taking this course. Like, okay, I'm going to learn how to evaluate stocks and real estate deals, and mostly stocks. And we're going to talk a little bit about real estate here too, to the degree I feel comfortable with it. Mostly going to be stocks and options. And I actually use real estate as a metaphor to teach the stocks and options that I understand better. So we're going to move off personal, but I'll tell you, no financial statement's more important than your personal. No fundamental analysis more important than your personal. When we come back, we're going to do corporate, and it's going to be awesome.